Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 65 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans.
All right. We took a little hiatus last week partially because I was busy the previous weekend. I wasn't able to watch all of the Nebraska-Minnesota game, but I've caught up on it now, and we've had the Nebraska Bethune-Cookman game as well, along with the release of the first playoff rankings and some big upsets in the wider sphere of college football. So there's a lot to talk about this week.
Absolutely.
We've got some recruiting news as well, along with the fact that my dad is currently in Nevada as part of the good old RV trips, RVing across the country that they do. So we may experience some technical in and outs on the Discord call today, but it should be stable.
We're going to do our best, right?
That's right.
And, you're supposed to use your editing magic, Mr. Editor.
Editing can only do so much. There's the
right.
Fix it in post phrase. If people are saying that all the time on set, that's usually a worrying sign. All right. So before we dive into the main topic of discussions for this week, I believe you have a beverage to crack for us.
I do, and it's a wonderful Grain Belt premium beer that is a beer that is produced in the hometown of your great-grandmother, New Ulm, Minnesota. Here we go. There we go. That even has a deeper tone because it's a nice tall boy 16-ouncer.
Yeah, no,
Fine beverage.
It had a nice crack to it for sure. So as I said, in week 8 of the college football season was the Nebraska-Minnesota game. I was not able to watch it live because there was a film festival going on that weekend here in LA. I had a buddy coming out from college to visit, so it was a fun weekend. Not able to watch the game, but I was keeping a bit of an eye on the score. And of course, the first game of the year that I don't watch is the one that we win. So funny how that works. We both gave our predictions back on episode 64 for that game. I predicted, being a bit pessimistic, that Minnesota would win 31-28, whereas you predicted a Nebraska victory, that this would be where we would turn the corner, of 35-31. And the final score ended up being more than either of us predicted, by quite a margin, 53-28 Nebraska.
Yay!
Finally, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then I did get the chance to watch the game. There's a kind person who uploads all these games to YouTube, but cuts them down to like 40-minute versions by like just cutting in the game, the plays basically, none of the stuff in between. So I watched that. And I was struck by one. There was a lot of positive things, obviously, that we did, but also Minnesota. That score does not really show how close the game was, because I believe there are a total of 21 points that Minnesota easily could have gotten. What was it? There was one where they went for it on 4th down, and they didn't get it near the goal line, where they could have kicked a field goal at least and gotten some points. And then there was a time where they were driving it, and then we got an interception near they were close to scoring. We got an interception that stopped that score, and I forget what the third one was, but I know there was a third too.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of the specific. I remember the interception, but and the other one you described, but I don't remember the other.
Actually, I think the other one was a touchdown, and then it got called back by a penalty. I think that's what it was.
Oh yes, there was that.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So
and then we ended up forcing them. I think we got a sack, or they had a penalty, or whatever. They ended up out of field goal range altogether, I think.
That's correct. That happened. And so I might be wrong about the 4th down one. I'm not entirely sure, but I just remember there was 21 points that very easily could have gone their way, and now that's if I was a Minnesota fan, I might say that, but it's like, well, but the dice fell that way. You could do coulda, shoulda, woulda all day, and we can certainly do that with a lot of our games where, untimely penalties or interceptions cost
Oh
us
yeah,
games. So this time it
absolutely.
actually went in our favor for a change, which was nice. But like as you said, there were still some very bad misalignments on some in the secondary that let them get some big pass plays where the guys were just wide open.
Right, and basically what you're saying is true. That I mean, and that's true really not only for this game, but the one we'll talk about next. Our defense is just, it's not even average. It is below average, right? And and we're just going to have to recognize that that's where we're at. And now it's getting better. We've eliminated a good number of the mistakes. I'll say most of the mistakes that we were making early in the year that were just crazy stupid that caused us to lose a couple of games have been cleaned up for the most part. But the reality is just play in, play out. We're not able to stop a team from running it down our throats. We aren't able to do that. And then passing wise, it's just amazing that we can't seem to match up with anybody. Now they're starting to make some changes to how we play defense to try to protect ourselves a little bit from that. We're playing more zone than we were earlier in the year. So we're doing some things to hide some weaknesses that we might have.
Right.
But you still got to play some man so that you're changing things up enough that the other team can't start settling in on the fact that, okay, this is a zone team now, and we're gonna pick them apart at the seams.
Mm-hmm.
And so because that would happen if we did. So defensively we're a mess, but offensively we've begun to click, and if we can get in rhythm like we did really for portions of both of the last two games, then we can be very prolific offensively.
Yep, and I will say in praise of the defense, there were some situations where we went man to man with their receivers, and our guys, were doing the proper thing, like turning their head and getting in the way of the ball or knocking it down. And I think I remember Mo Berry had a lot of good plays. I was really impressed with the effort that he was showing on the
Yep,
field as well.
right. Mo always gives great effort. There are certainly times when he makes bonehead wrong decisions that I scratch my head and think, how could he do that? And usually what that means is he's a guy that plays hard, but he also guesses. There's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between reading and guessing, or having a feel for the game. And when you do that, sometimes you choose wrong, or your feeling is wrong, or and in those cases you can look pretty silly.
Right.
And that's the difference between having 11 guys that know exactly what they're supposed to be doing and they're where they're supposed to be, and having guys who are just trying to make plays because collectively as a unit we're just not there yet.
Right. And
And
and I did think it was interesting watching those Minnesota receivers. There were some balls that they like had in their hands that they dropped, or some plays where the QB just messed up, clearly overthrew him or whatever. But then you might remember there were two beautiful like jump ball catches that the receivers made. Where it's like, okay, in situations like that, you just kind of sometimes you just gotta give credit to the other team for making a great play.
right, exactly. And it's nice to have a team that makes some mistakes on its own. I mean, that's one of the frustrating things is we if you roll the clock back the last few games that Ohio State has played, they have not looked real crisp. They've struggled to run the football. Their quarterback it hasn't even been part of their game plan for him to tuck it and run, even in situations where it might have made sense for him to do so. Um, but in a game like Minnesota, we saw a team that made some mistakes. They should have caught some passes that they didn't catch. They were right in their hands, or a quarterback that had a wide open receiver and he overthrew him. But and you need a team to do a few of those things along the way to have some success, and then that leads to you winning a football game. And for Nebraska in recent games, recent years, even that has not been the case, and it's part of the fact that you have to make the other team uncomfortable before they tighten up and make those kind of mistakes. Otherwise, it's like they're playing football against air, and they don't have to worry about anything. And so then they're relaxed and they catch the football. They don't drop the football. The quarterback throws it right where he's supposed to because he's not feeling the pressure. Those kinds of things.
Right.
So you've got to make a team uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And we did that. We did that at Minnesota.
Right, and also I think we only had like 6 penalties that game, which compared to our like average of 10 was definitely an improvement. Though you'll recall on the Northwestern podcast, one of the things I mentioned was that Northwestern has a reputation of being a team that isn't the most flashy, but is well coached and doesn't make many mistakes. But they did in that game, and we were able to exploit some and not others. And then obviously we made the colossal mistake of being up by 10 with 5 minutes to go and still letting them come back to tie it. But that was a situation where Northwestern did make some mistakes and we were up and we still weren't able to clutch it out.
Right, exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Last thing to mention on the Minnesota game, just because I thought, the stat line is very impressive. Adrian Martinez was 25 of 29 passes for 276 yards and rushed it 15 times for 125 yards in that game. So definitely a great day for him, and I think getting a win with such a strong performance probably helped boost his confidence. Clearly the team itself was just energized. Ozigbo had some great runs. So I think, after the tough loss to Northwestern, it was definitely good that we finally were able to pull one out.
It really was. And we have to just to concede that when you can now relax and recognize that this year is already gone from the standpoint of a lot of the goals that the team had set. Now it's just a matter of winning as many games as they can and really focusing on themselves and getting better every day because they don't have necessarily anything else to look forward to. I mean, their chances of getting to a bowl game are slim and none. So the good news for Nebraska is those guys can play in the moment. They have no pressure on them. It really can't get worse for them at this point. It's all a matter of them just going out with pride and making sure that they play hard through these last 4 games that we have. So it's kind of a freeing situation.
Right. And I'm not 100% certain if this is, just kind of normal, kind of bluster and saying what the fans want to hear, to the media and stuff. But it seems like, after this kind of period of shakeup with some players leaving and things of that nature, some of these players who have stayed or who have, been promoted over, the more talented first teamers because they weren't putting in the effort, etc. These people seem to have gotten that mentality and what Frost has been telling them about, improving and we're building something here. And you see Martinez and other leaders on the team in interviews saying like, if you guys can't see what we're building here, then you're blind to it or whatever. They did.
Right.
It seems like the ones who have kind of stuck through this span have a tougher mental resolve now because of it.
I totally agree. I think that the team really has bonded, and so Coach Frost has achieved some of his main team and long-term program goals that he set for the season, even in the midst of an 0-6 start, which that's probably one of the more remarkable things is that he's been able to wield this team into a group, even though this did not go the way they had hoped it would.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and not to mention also that when you look at our schedule, right now we're standing at 2-6, but there are, I would say, 3 of those 6 losses were very close to being W's. Like between Colorado, Troy, and Northwestern. If we were now sitting at what would be then a 5-3 season, then I think there'd be a very different kind of mentality amongst the team and amongst the fan base in terms of how this first season has gone. But like you say, there might be some benefits to like falling so low so early and kind of building back up. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Right. Exactly. Well, exactly. That is we can't look back and worry about those what ifs or what could have been, because it is what prompts me to do that is, as we sit here today at 2-6, Northwestern is in the driver's seat to win the Big Ten West, and that just blows me away because
Yeah.
we're better than them. You
Right,
know,
right. Well, yeah. When we get into the national discussion, we'll talk about that because that is kind of a crazy turn of events. But that's where we're at right now in the Big Ten.
right?
The second game to talk about from Week 9 is the Bethune-Cookman game, which was the fill-in in our bye week to make up for the Akron game that was canceled due to weather at the beginning of the year. And we won the game handily with a 45-9 score. I couldn't tell just because I wasn't paying super close attention to the roster. Did we play the whole second half with like second teamers and the second team quarterback and everything, or was it just part of the second half?
No, pretty much the whole second half. The starters on offense did not play in the second half, except for probably like an extra point. Maybe the first group, but for extra point went in after the touchdown and stuff. But we basically did not. What do I say? Did not play the primary starters. The offensive line was all second teamers. The running backs were all the backups. Even not even for a play, it seemed like. And then obviously Adrian Martinez didn't play in the second half at all, not even a snap. And that was a point of contention for the color commentator and the play-by-play people. They were shocked at how that happened. But I think, frankly, that Coach Frost had already had some conversations with the other coach and stuff, and I think Scott went out of his way to make sure that we didn't run up the score, because it probably would have been beneficial for us to have that first team go out there at least for one snap after halftime to kind of reestablish the momentum. But I think he didn't even want to put them in that situation. I think he wanted to put the onus on the second team and challenge them to figure it out. And you know what? They failed initially. They kind of screwed it up. Now, some of that was tough situations. Our defense put them in a difficult situation because they gave up so many yards, and they ended up having to start their first drive of the second half on like the 5-yard line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of my takeaways. Was we won't talk too long about this game because I mean clearly we were the better team. In terms of prestige and program, it's not even close. But Martinez had another good day. We had some big plays on offense in the first half with the first teamers out there. I was struck by how the second teamers struggled in the second half to score. And eventually, we did get a score later on in the second half. But it does go to show kind of the lack of depth, which we knew was a thing, but it just kind of put into focus that if they're struggling this bad against Bethune-Cookman, they'd have a long way to go.
Well, but the thing is that these are players that, as a collective group like that, had never really had much of a chance to play in games, and so because we hadn't blown anybody out, obviously with a 2-6 record, so the reality was this was their first extensive opportunity to play, and to play with the third string quarterback, really, because of his recent availability, because his eligibility was finally approved by the NCAA. So I think it was part of it was Vedral being a little off, because this was a very different circumstance than he thought he was going to be in even just 2 weeks ago. And then also that whole collective group of offensive linemen and those wide receivers and running backs to be able to all be in there together. Now, as the second half progressed, they seemed to get more and more together on that. They still had hiccups that kept them from executing at a high level, but you could begin to see some things, particularly in the running game. I mean, late in that game, we were running the ball almost at will. Like we were getting 8 or 10 yards a carry. But then we would go away from it because obviously Coach Frost and the staff wanted to evaluate some of their receivers, and they wanted to evaluate Vedral as a quarterback. So that played into it also.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and
the raggedness was probably not completely unexpected by Scott. I think he did express after the game that he was disappointed because I think he was feeling like and hopeful that, hey, we're in week 8 here. These guys should be, have their stuff together, and it doesn't matter that they haven't gotten a lot of live ball snaps. But the truth is that you can practice all you want, but when it's live in front of 90,000 people or whatever, then you just behave differently. And so you get false starts and you get guys making little mistakes and you get receivers dropping balls that they wouldn't normally drop. Those are just things that happen until they just kind of settle in and realize, oh, it's no different. I'm just playing football.
exactly. Yep. Um, and yeah, that's a good point. And I did appreciate how the offense did kind of get going more as the game went on. And it's probably good, that at this point in the season we were kind of allowed to give our guys a bit of a break, especially considering the very tough game we have coming up next week, and get those second team guys some snaps so that they can start coming together as a unit, just like you explained. So yeah, do you have anything else you want to say about this game?
Well, the other thing that was really important in this game was that we be able to both demonstrate our superiority when early in the game, which we were able to do. We were able to get out quick. That was very important. And then the second thing was that the the team, the primary players, the first and second units, generally speaking, all came out of it without any injuries, and it was almost like a practice, like a scrimmage for the offense. You know what I mean? The defense ended up playing quite a bit because they kept giving up yards, but the offense basically had a scrimmage, and that's exactly what you want on your bye week, right? So it really was not any different for Nebraska than if they had a bye week this week for the offensive side of the football.
Well, to an extent, but like you just said, there's a difference between practice and live games. So I would say in some ways
Oh,
it was
right.
better
So it's
than
even better.
a bye
Yeah,
week.
yeah. But I mean, in terms of the mental strain and the physical wear and tear, they didn't get nearly as much of that as they would have if they had been playing a full blown opponent. So having this, frankly, allowed Nebraska to achieve a lot of the things that a coach might achieve during an off week.
Oh, yep. Yep. No. And I remember you mentioning like the importance of not getting any big injuries, on a game like this that doesn't, really matter that much. Like we should be in control, and thankfully we didn't. So the injury fairy has been a little bit more merciful to our team this year than in some past years. To hope maybe to compensate for the fact that we got out to an 0-6 start. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if that keeps up. Now we can move into the more national discussion. We have the week 8 of college football to discuss. And
Yes.
the game I want to start with is what was probably the biggest shock to most people in college football. Ohio State losing to Purdue 49-20.
Yeah. Wow.
I saw there was a pretty funny compilation I saw of it showed Urban Meyer like on the sidelines, after like every Purdue score or whatever. You just see like his hands on his head, and this is a team that beat us, but definitely a team that we felt competitive with versus when we played against Michigan and just got our butts kicked, and you expect Ohio State to be kind of on that level or even better than Michigan. So to see their players just like totally not being energized and ready for the game and focused. They clearly thought they could sleepwalk through it, and Purdue made them pay.
Right. I agree. Well, and this is now the second year in a row that Ohio State, which pretty much had, the path, if you will, to a playoff, and they end up laying an egg along the way with basically a 500 type football team. Last year it was Iowa, and this year it was Purdue. Not to say that Purdue's a bad football team, because they're not. They're a very good football team. Well, they're a good football team, but capable of playing at a very high level. And Purdue played very high level. on that day. Everything was clicking for them, and Ohio State was injured, was beat up, and was not mentally sharp and ready to play. And that just shows you, even with the extreme talent differential that you could probably line up those guys and compare the rosters. The fact is that if you're not putting in the effort, then you can look very, very weak. Now that this game, we can go on and talk about other games, but this game here, Purdue Ohio State, has more implication on Nebraska's next game than anything else.
Yeah.
So just so you know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, for one, I was happy just watching. I didn't watch the game live, but I watched some of the highlights afterwards, and it did make me happy seeing those Purdue fans, because of the home game, of course, going crazy with all the big plays they were getting. So you could tell that's a game that will live in their memory for a long time to come. A beacon
Right.
for their program. So I feel happy for them for that. But yeah, then part of me also was kind of selfishly like, well, great, Ohio State gets this wake up call, and then they have a bye week, and then they play us, which means that Urban Meyer is going to have them extra focused. And hey, you can't, even though Nebraska's 2-6, they got Scott Frost, they're a talented team. This Adrian Martinez guy is good, and you just got your asses kicked by Purdue. You're not sleepwalking on them, and so I have the feeling that they're going to be ready for us.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Yep.
So, yep. What else from that week do you want to talk about?
Well, the other game we gave a prediction on was the Michigan MSU game, Michigan State game, a historic rivalry in the state that we are from. And I predicted a 42-35 victory for Michigan, because you predicted a lower scoring 31-17, which turned out to be closer to the truth. It was even lower scoring than that, 21-7.
Right.
Which was a definite kind of shock to me, just watching the replay afterwards, how much MSU struggled on offense. I believe the one score they got was off of a turnover, and their defense gave them great field position, and then they scored after that. So the offense, I don't think, ever got like a full drive across the field in the whole game.
That is correct. And it was a weird game because there was a lightning or weather delay and all these kinds of things. So it was just odd from the very get-go. But frankly, Michigan's defense basically suffocated Michigan State's offense, and Michigan State's offense couldn't do anything. And their starting quarterback couldn't do much at all, and ended up, I think, getting hurt. But Michigan, frankly, had opportunities to make it an even bigger game, bigger win for them. But they found ways to, keep themselves, get in their own way, whatever you want to call it. And Michigan State played pretty darn well defensively too. And there was quite a bit of time there where you were thinking, if Michigan doesn't start taking advantage of some of these opportunities that they're getting, that Michigan State's going to finally right the ship here on their offense and make them pay. But it just never quite happened. And then finally Michigan created a little distance for them.
Yeah. Yep, so a Michigan victory is kind of what we all expected, but definitely disappointing for the MSU fans. I'm trying to remember, the game last year, wasn't that also like a weird game played in the rain where Michigan State upset Michigan in that case?
Yes, Michigan State did upset Michigan, and I believe it was kind of a rainy day. Yep, I think you are correct.
Yeah, I remember that
previous year.
From last year. And then another interesting upset was Washington State beat 12th ranked Oregon at the time of Week 8. They beat them 34-20, and then followed it up the next week with a 41-38 victory over Stanford, putting them at the head of the Pac-12.
Yeah, very surprising. Very surprising. And I just, I when you start looking at those scores, you just think, I haven't looked at Washington State's schedule to determine, who else they still have to play. But I just have this sneaky suspicion that there's going to be a loss in there somewhere, maybe two, for Washington State, just because of the nature of the way that they won the games they did, and whether or not they can sustain what they have been able to accomplish, where they play well on both sides of the ball and in the special teams areas. I think that was devastating for the Pac-12 though, because after Washington had lost as well unexpectedly to who was it that they lost to?
Oh,
I can't remember. But
Cal.
Cal, yeah, that's it. We're now looking at a Pac-12 where Washington State might very well be their best hope for getting into the playoffs.
Right. Yep. So I just pulled up their schedule here. Washington State lost to USC, but close, 39-36 earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat Utah close before that. So they've been on, they lost to USC, but then they beat Utah. They beat Oregon State. They beat Oregon. They beat Stanford. And they have Cal, Colorado, Arizona, and Washington left. So if they beat all those teams, I mean, and then they're definitely in the big Pac-12 championship. So yeah, I think they could potentially make a playoff run, but they'd have to win all of those. I think
win them all, right. And I don't know that they're gonna. At least at this point, it's my opinion that they won't. And then if they don't, well, there's not a lot of other teams that could reemerge as in the thick of that.
And
so,
what do you think is the deal with that? Because for the past, I'd say, I'm not exactly sure, but ever since Chip Kelly had those like dominant years at Oregon, it seems like the Pac-12 has been kind of in a weird situation where they have good teams, but like they beat up on each other enough that they're always at like 2 losses by the end of the year, and they have not been in the playoff as of yet, I don't believe.
They have. Washington was in.
Okay. But they've been left out in multiple years, is my point.
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
And
you are correct. They do tend to have that circumstance where none of them are, they have these wide open offenses. None of them have the kind of dominant defensive presence that can lead to a team that just pretty much is able to be in control of almost every game they're in. And the only time that a team with great defense has trouble is when their offense uncharacteristically has turnovers, or whatever at a higher level than that kind of a thing. And that's where a defense just can't do enough, and they run out of time and lose a football game. Whereas in the Pac-12, it seems like the modus operandi is that they have these prolific offenses, and so at least one day, if not twice in a season, these teams have a less than perfect kind of day offensively. And when that happens, then they can look really bad and lose. And so that tends to happen. And so you end up with all these guys muddled at the top with 1, 2, 3 losses. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it keeps them out of the playoff. That's right. Which is going to be all the more fodder for when they finally sit down as a whole collection of college football, brands and have this discussion about the playoff. They're gonna expand it to 8 because that way they can at least guarantee that conference champion's going no matter what. So then it allows the beating each other up mentality to occur, almost like it happens in basketball, in NCAA basketball, where it's all the only thing that matters is winning the championship at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
Just win your division so that you can play in the championship game, and then you're in the playoff. Boom.
Yep. It does create that mentality, though. We won't go into the whole expanding conversation because we've done that plenty of times in the past. But I kind of like how it is now. How one team from one of the champion from one of the conferences is basically always going to be left out. It kind of puts added pressure, I think, on everybody to perform or to have a strong schedule or what have you.
Well, and if the selection committee was doing a better job, in my opinion, of giving teams credibility for playing tough schedules and recognizing that they could have an off day and being willing to ignore it, where so far they haven't been able to do that. They're still putting too much of a premium on undefeated and not enough of a premium on strength of schedule, and acknowledging that these teams that are playing in these conferences that are filled with good to very good football teams they're going to knock each other off. That is just the nature of the beast. So, and my concern is that because we now have a Notre Dame in the mix this year for the first time. Well, not the first time, but in a while now, since 2012 or whatever. And Notre Dame's going to be in the mix for this deal. And if they're in it, then we're like last year. There are going to be two conferences that are left out because last year the SEC got two teams out of the four, and they may get that again this year based on how that stupid system works. But that would be particularly devastating this year because Notre Dame's likely to be in it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if they just do what they're supposed to do, Notre Dame's in.
Yeah, well,
so you're going to end up with the Pac-12 probably on the outside looking in, and either the Big 12 or the Big 10 on the outside looking in. You're going to have two of them not doing it because it's looking pretty likely that Alabama is going to be one of them from the SEC. It's looking pretty likely that Clemson, who seems to have really taken hold of themselves and taken a step in the right direction. So you got the two traditionals now, Clemson and Alabama are in, and you're going to have likely a one-loss Notre Dame team in. So there's three of the four candidates. Now who's left? Mm-hmm. You're choosing between potentially a one-loss Oklahoma team from the Big 12, or hopefully at this point, the best argument that could be made would be for Michigan. If Michigan was to win out, including beating Ohio State and then beating probably Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, but are they going to be held down because the Big Ten West is down, and the Wisconsin team that everybody had highly regarded at the beginning of the season has fallen on hard times and is not playing at the level expected. So that Big Ten conference championship game won't mean anything in the eyes of a lot of people nationally and maybe even the committee. Now, but the strong thing that's in Michigan's favor, and that's why I picked Michigan over, say, an Ohio State, which obviously they're also in the same mix. But with Ohio State, there's going to be the same argument of last year of, but Ohio State lost to Iowa last year. It's going to be, but Ohio State got their ass handed to them by Purdue, who may ultimately still end up being about a 500 team. But Michigan's only loss right now is to Notre Dame, at Notre Dame. And if Notre Dame is one of the four participants, then you could look at it and say, well, hey, Michigan's only loss was on the road to one of the participants in the in the Final Four, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously you choose them over an Oklahoma team whose loss was to a lesser opponent, in this case, Texas. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think that would be in Michigan's favor. Ohio State doesn't have that argument. I think that it flips to Oklahoma then if Ohio State ends up being our Big Ten champion.
I think your Notre Dame is still undefeated, though. Aren't they? They didn't lose to Texas.
Notre Dame didn't play Texas. No. I'm saying Oklahoma.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misheard you there.
Yeah. Yes. Oklahoma. No. Right. So Notre Dame is likely to get into the playoff, is my point.
Yeah. No. If they go undefeated, Notre Dame is in. That seems pretty clear, for sure. Going into some of those other big games that are worth talking about. Speaking of Texas, they lost in a close game against Oklahoma State, 35-38. Good old high score in a Big 12 game. And then you had Georgia beating Florida 36-17. That one was not as much of an upset, but that was a big game from this past week.
Yes.
And you had Kentucky playing against Missouri, where Kentucky won, but only 15-14 by 1 point, and they were ranked 12th in the AP poll that week. So they're having a good season. They're highly regarded. And then Washington lost to Cal, like you mentioned, 10-12, kind of an odd score. That was another upset. This was a week full of upsets.
Like sure. 11 of them.
Yeah, big ones. Texas A&M, who was 16th, lost to Mississippi State 13-28. And an interesting one in the Big Ten. uh, Penn State beat Iowa 30-24. So I guess that's not as much of an upset. Just
No,
that'd be more
unless you
expected.
watch the game and then you realize all the ways that Iowa may have won that football game and didn't. But the bigger upset from the Big Ten was Northwestern
Right.
beating,
Wisconsin.
Northwestern beating Wisconsin, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the big one.
Yeah,
So
31-17, which, as you mentioned earlier, now puts Northwestern at the head of the division. That you would have expected Wisconsin probably to be there, but now Northwestern, even though I think they have 3 losses, they're undefeated in conference, I believe. So
right,
they're
right.
at the top right now.
So here's the thing with the Notre Dame. We were talking earlier about the Final Four and the implications of that. Notre Dame plays Northwestern this coming weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and then and it's at Northwestern. Then they play FSU at home, Syracuse at home, and then at USC. So Syracuse is not ranked 19th. They've had a very good season this year. Florida State has had a disastrous season, so you'd expect that to be a victory for them. Ironically, that would have been the one that would have jumped out at me at the beginning of the season that I might have perceived to be the challenge in that list. But now the Northwestern game and the Syracuse game are going to be interesting, and the USC game might be a referendum on USC's head coach, depending on how the rest of their season goes.
Mm.
So,
Do you think it's that dire for USC?
well, I tell you, I'm certainly hearing plenty of murmuring and complaints out of people that seem to be closer to the USC team than me, of course, but that coach might be in trouble if he isn't able to turn it around. They're not very happy with that level of the level of performance that they've had this year.
Mm-hmm. Right. And what do you make of because we kind of skimmed over it, but Texas, who was ranked 6th in the AP poll at the time, losing to Oklahoma
Yeah.
State, that knocks them out of playoff contention, where
Yes, it does.
they were
Yeah,
still kind of in it before then.
that is correct, and that's a big deal for U.S. For Texas because they've still got a couple of tough games left within their conference that they need to win them now. All of a sudden, the pressure's back on him. I mean, he got the monkey off his back by beating Oklahoma in the Red River shootout, and then and now it's right back on his shoulders again because he loses to Oklahoma State. So
Right.
that's going to be a tough one on him.
Yeah. Looking ahead at Oklahoma's schedule, they could definitely win out. They have Texas Tech,
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma State, Kansas, and then West Virginia at the end, who is currently highly ranked. So that's not an easy game. But if they went through all that and then played in their championship game,
Right, and Oklahoma State just beat Texas, so you can't ignore that game either. So there's a couple of games in there where Oklahoma might be susceptible to another letdown type of game for themselves, but they've been so prolific offensively that I don't know that that's going to happen. So I expect Oklahoma to go undefeated the rest of the way. And so it's going to make for a very interesting conversation. And the Big Ten can either play themselves out of this or play themselves into the conversation with based on what happens to Ohio State and what happens to Michigan. Like, let's say for the sake of a Nebraska podcast discussion, let's say that the unthinkable happens and Nebraska goes into Ohio State this weekend on the heels of our 2-game winning streak, and Ohio State, coming in with a few question marks in their own mind about their own team, and heck, even their own coach, who's been in the news for a bunch of stuff that doesn't have to do with the football team. All of a sudden, we find a way and outscore them in some crazy score fest, and we beat them. So now Ohio State's got 2 losses. Well, and then they turn around at the end of the year and play, a Michigan team who's got one loss, but then plays at Ohio State at the Horseshoe for the last game of the year, and then Ohio State finds a way to beat them again,
Mm-hmm.
and voila. Now what? Because now Ohio State might very well be, going to the conference championship game to play Northwestern with two losses, and they're out of the playoff conversation completely.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's just an awful lot to go on there, and not very many of it. There's no room for error for Ohio State or Michigan at this point if they want to be in the playoffs. No room for error whatsoever, and they still need some help. They need Oklahoma to lose a game, and it'd be great, if Notre Dame lost a game somewhere along the line too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, this might be a good time to bring up the official college football playoff rankings, which the first week of those came out, and obviously tying into kind of what we've been talking about. So we've got Alabama at number 1, no surprise there. Clemson 2, LSU 3, Notre Dame 4, Michigan 5, Georgia 6, Oklahoma 7. We'll stop there. The one that kind of stood out to me was having LSU over Notre Dame. And
yes,
I went ahead and double checked their schedule to remind myself. And they have had, they beat Miami at the beginning of the year. They beat Auburn.
Yep.
They lost to Florida, but then they followed it up the next week and beat Georgia, which is a big upset. And they beat Mississippi
Yep.
State this past weekend. So LSU definitely has a better case than I thought.
Yes, and that's why they're there now. And see, that's one of the great things, the things I like about the college football playoff committee is, they look at what has happened so far, and they don't necessarily worry too much about what's going to happen in the future, and they're okay with making some significant. So just because a team is behind some of these other teams doesn't mean they won't leapfrog them if they have a major, if they face a major opponent in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then they're able to win that game, then they will get a lot of credit for that win, and it'll move them up. LSU, of course, has played a lot of those teams, and they also know that LSU still play. I believe they play Alabama this weekend.
Yes, they do.
So there you go. That's going to sort itself out. Either LSU is going to beat Alabama, which is going to blow people away, and if Alabama were to lose to LSU, Alabama should, keyword being should, tumble quite considerably because Alabama has played nobody. Alabama has not had a very difficult schedule. Just like last year, they did not have to play the best teams in their conference. They were able to somehow, their schedule was just very generous to them. And so this year, again, if you look at who Alabama's played, they don't have that many big name, big time victories. And so if they were to lose to LSU, I think Alabama could tumble to say 8th or 9th. And a lot of those teams would move ahead of them.
Well, I would be even if if LSU blew them out, I could see that happening. But I would be very shocked to see Alabama tumble that far, considering the fact
right.
that there aren't that many undefeated teams left. They'd be like, okay, so they're a one-loss team, but they're Alabama, so we give them some extra credit.
And right, and their losses to LSU. So you're right. They probably would be still put ahead of Georgia, but Georgia's a 7-1 team, and so I don't know. It just Michigan would be 7-1, having their only loss to Notre Dame, who's ranked number 4. So I mean, you can start doing the comparative scores thing, and whatever, right? So
yeah, and
we'll see.
And looking ahead at Alabama's schedule, LSU game is obviously going to be tough. They play Mississippi State after that, which is not a walkthrough game. Then they play Citadel, who is
what a joke.
Yeah, I don't know how they got that so late in their schedule, but they do. And then obviously
they do that every year. It happens every year. They do this every year, Alex. They always play a joke team the week before their rivalry game, their last game of the year against Auburn.
All right, I guess, in some years they've done the big first game of the year, at a neutral site kind
Correct.
of thing where they play a tough opponent. So I guess that's where like their out of conference kind of easy game, they kind of bring one
Right,
back
but they
at
they,
the
they
end.
never they never they when they play those games, they always play them at a neutral site, always in the South. It's either at the Georgia Dome or it's over at Jerry Jones Stadium over in Texas. They never play up north. They just don't do it. Um, and um, yeah, so they got it going, man. They got the formula. There's no doubt about it. And you're it's just hopeful, wishful thinking on my part that Alabama would tumble. My only point is that if you look at who they really have played, if the first time they play a legitimate top 10 opponent that is LSU and they were to lose, they should tumble because some of these other teams who've lost in the same fashion, but they have other victories that are worthwhile, that are more arguably um, more legit.
Hmm.
I'm tired of Alabama getting the annual benefit of the doubt. Clemson is obviously starting to come together, and some of the teams that I thought were going to give them the biggest challenge are probably not going to now based on what they've looked like. So Clemson looks like a team that might go undefeated as well.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So here you go.
Well,
Uh, Louisville. This is Alabama's season so far. Louisville, Arkansas State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, University of Louisiana Lafayette, Arkansas, Mizzou, and Tennessee.
yeah, yeah,
That's who they've played.
yeah. So there are some mid-level teams kind of in there, but yeah, nobody
Yeah,
like top tier.
yeah. Texas A&M at 22nd is the only ranked opponent at this point of the teams that they've played.
Yep.
So
Yep, which you're
just to
right,
say,
and that goes to show you kind of the vulnerability of their scheduling decision is that if they do lose, then their strength of schedule isn't as strong as some of the other
right.
teams. But
And
last year we saw that play out, that discussion play out, and they still managed to sneak their way in there.
exactly, and that's what pisses me off. So anyway,
Yep.
okay, rant. Oh,
All right, rant over. So looking ahead to Week 10, we've mentioned some of the big games already, like LSU, Alabama, Northwestern playing Notre Dame. We also have Georgia versus Kentucky. We have West Virginia versus Texas, which we mentioned. Penn State, Michigan, which is a big game in the Big 10, obviously. Iowa plays Purdue, and Texas A&M, Auburn are some kind of smaller
yes,
ones. So
yes,
exciting week for college football fans.
absolutely, absolutely, and you know, um, Iowa, Purdue. Did you mention that in that list?
Yes, I did.
Okay, yeah, that's a big game in the Big Ten now. That's huge, huge in the West for sure.
Right.
I mean, beyond obviously Northwestern plays Notre Dame. That has no impact on the Big Ten race, but still is a big deal from the national perspective. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if Northwestern, could somehow find it in them to upset Notre Dame, that would be pretty crazy. To upset Wisconsin and then Notre Dame the next week after they
yeah,
should have lost to Nebraska.
right.
That'd be something
So
else.
there's quite a few. I mean, there's quite a few really good games, like you say, this week. That's going to be an exciting week.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously we have our game against Ohio State. So
Yes.
um, let's start with our predictions here. What is your outlook for the OSU Nebraska game?
Hmm. Well, as I've thought about it, um, you know, I would agree with most pundits that this is not our year. It's clearly not our year. Our defense, even in these two victories, has still looked below average, in my opinion. Ohio State, we're catching them at absolutely the worst possible time to catch Ohio State. I think we're going to get their best effort, bar none. And so I think this one gets ugly. But I think that our offense is able to move the football with some proficiency, and so we're going to score a few points. So I'm gonna say we're going to end up with 17 points, and Ohio State's going to end up with 45. So it's going to be 45-17 Ohio State.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable to me. It is at home for us, right? So
No, it's at Ohio State.
it is at Ohio State. Oh, right. So it says
Yeah.
Ohio State versus Nebraska. Okay, so even harder then. Great.
Yeah.
Yes, and so looking back at the Michigan game, they creamed us that game 56-10.
Right.
And so I'm going to go ahead and say that OSU will score a similar number of points against us. Because, like you say, I think that area of our team is still weak. But I think our offense has taken a step up since that Michigan game. So I'm going to say 56-24. Let's go with that. 56-24.
Okay. All right. Yep. Regretfully, those are very reasonable scores for
True.
what we could expect.
True, but even if this season had gone well, we would be penciling in this Ohio State game as a loss, especially like you said, considering that they just lost and they're going to be focused and they're coming off a bye week. Like in most scenarios that you could reasonably come up with, we would still think this would be a loss.
Right now, having said that, for my prediction, here's what I hope happens. What I'm hoping happens is that we can come out, which we've been able to do here in recent weeks. Once we kind of cleaned up our errors, and we score early. So I would love it if we're able to score on one of our first two possessions, maybe both of the first two possessions, and actually hang with Ohio State for a little while, so that midway through the second quarter, it's still a very winnable, competitive game, and maybe even because of that, then we get into the early second half where it's still in doubt. I do not want a situation like we had at Michigan, where the game's over before we ever even go into the locker room at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me would be a bit of a developmental victory, for lack of a better term, in terms of how the program was moving in the right direction. And maybe a year from now, when we play them in Lincoln, that's when we can start to talk about, okay, could a miracle happen?
Right. That's when the miracle talk can happen. And then I think the other game that seems like we have to talk about is the Alabama LSU game. Number 1 playing number 4, number 3 rather, according to the playoff rankings. And it just checked. It is at LSU, so that does help LSU a little bit. I want to. My heart wants to say that LSU can pull off the upset since they beat Georgia. But I do feel like, Nick Saban's a damn good coach, and given the fact that this was the clear hardest game on their schedule, I bet you he has been game planning for this one for extra long and will have his team extra prepared to go up against the Tigers.
I would agree with you points, but I am going to go emotional. I'm not going to use my brain in this. And I'm going to say this is college football. I'm going to say this is LSU. But now, you know what? You know what I need to look up before I finalize that statement is when is this being played? What day? What time of day? Is this a night game?
At 5 p.m. It says
5 p.m. That's a weird time. That's 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Probably.
So that's 8 p.m. Yeah, that's 8 p.m. Eastern. Okay.
Yes.
So that's a night at Death Valley at LSU. That is a tough environment. So I'm going to say the LSU crowd is in a frenzy. The team feeds that energy and upsets Alabama. I don't care what the score is, but it's an LSU victory.
All right. So you're just saying LSU victory.
Yep. I'm going to say that stadium and the fans and the fact that LSU has played well enough to be competitive and has beaten some pretty darn good teams leads me to the point where I'm going to say LSU can do that. And Alabama is really going to be being tested in ways that they haven't been tested in this season, other than Texas A&M. And I don't consider Texas A&M to be on the same level as LSU. So there you go.
Okay, I'm gonna be use my head instead of my heart. I'm gonna predict that Alabama wins 28-21. That's what I'm gonna go with. I think LSU
Okay.
will keep it close. I think it'll be a good game, but I'm gonna predict that Alabama clinches it. So we will see
Okay.
how that
Well,
goes.
let's go with a couple of more Big Ten games then. PSU Michigan.
Okay.
All right. Um, what do you think on that game?
That
It's at
is
Michigan. I believe it's at Michigan,
right. I believe it is, and this is coming off of Penn State beating Iowa. But they
but barely. They barely beat them, and they did not play well. Penn State did not play well.
right, and it seems like they rely a lot, obviously, on their great quarterback. If he's playing well, if he's clicking, then they're clicking. But if it's kind of like what's his name, the great running back at Stanford who was in
Yes.
Heisman contention.
Love. Yep.
Or no, that was the quarterback. I'm thinking of he was like the running back who also like caught the ball. Or was that Andrew Love? Am I
Yeah.
mistaken that?
Yes. No. You're thinking of Andrew Luck from years ago.
Oh,
No.
okay.
But Love is the name of the running back at Stanford. That like it's how he goes is determines how they go because they rely so heavily on the running game
Right.
there at Stanford. But yes, exactly, it's the same kind of thing with PSU where they're kind of singularly focused on how he goes, so goes the team, and it's at Michigan too. So
Right, which gives them an extra advantage. And so I
exactly,
just need to remind myself, right, and Penn State has lost to Michigan State and to Ohio State, though both games were close.
correct.
So I definitely think Penn State could make it interesting. But given that Michigan's defense did such a good job against Penn State or against Michigan State rather, I think that they will definitely give that quarterback a hard time. So I'm going to predict a Michigan victory. Let's say 31 to 24.
Wow. Okay, that's good. I'm also going to predict a Michigan victory, and I think it's going to be similar final score, uh, but to what you just said, um, um, but less. So instead of 31, what did you say? You said 31-24.
Yeah.
Let's subtract the touchdown from both of them and say 24-7. And I just don't think PSU is going to have much success offensively at all, and Michigan's going to dominate and then have enough. The score will be not indicative of how dominant the performance was, but because Michigan's offense still seems to sputter a little bit here and there. Um, but Michigan just has a way with Penn State. I think Michigan wins this game, and they do it comfortably. The score might be close just because of the way Michigan's offense is, but it'll be a game where they control things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna one quick last one: Purdue Iowa, and it's at Purdue. Huge game.
Okay.
So it's number 16 Iowa at Purdue. What do you think?
Iowa at Purdue. That is going to be interesting because I mean, traditionally I would definitely give it to Iowa, but given that Purdue is coming off of beating Ohio State, I'm a little bit more conflicted on that one.
But then they lost to Michigan State.
Right. Yes, they did in this past week.
Yeah.
So right.
So
Sorry, I'm just
they've been
refreshing.
on an emotional roller coaster.
Right, and they lost to Eastern Michigan earlier this year, Missouri.
Right.
So yeah, they've had an up and down kind of year for sure. So yeah, I would probably give the advantage to Iowa, in that case, but I think that will also be a close game. I do not see Iowa blowing them out or anything like that.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'll go ahead and predict, let's say, 21 Purdue or 21 Iowa, 14 Purdue, low scoring game.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to say that the Jekyll and Hyde thing continues for Purdue, but they play really well this week. I'm going to say it ends up being a fairly high-scoring game rather than a low-scoring game. I'm going to say it's 38-31 Purdue.
All right. High scoring game, 38-31.
Yep.
Fair enough, though. Okay. Yeah, I think that there are a lot of big games this week, so it's exciting. These last few weeks of the season are always exciting because now the real talk about the end of the season could really get moving. And who's going to get in the playoff and who's going to play in the championship games.
You can start schedule watching at this point, where you're looking ahead and saying, okay, you have enough information to say, I believe this team is going to win these games, and this is their real hurdle. And so you start trying to hone in on that. And of course, it never works out that way, but that's what you do. So that's the fun part of the season, where we're in the heart of it like this, where it really matters. Championships are won right now.
That's right.
In November. Well, and we didn't even get to it, but maybe for the next podcast, we'll need to devote a little bit more time to recruiting, because we won't be talking about 2 Nebraska games. We'll only be talking about 1. And it's likely one that we won't want to talk about very much. So that means we can talk very little about it, and we can shift our focus to what are the implications for the final 3 games, and how that leads us into next year.
Right. Yes. And as we teased near the beginning, there have been some big recruiting gains, and we'll know more by the end of this week as well for the Nebraska football program. So that is definitely exciting and something that we will talk about on next week's podcast. Hope you all out there enjoyed listening to this episode. You can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can find us online at collegefootballthrowdown. It's collegefootballthrowdown.podomatic.com is the name of the website. You can subscribe to us there, leave us a rating and review, comment, whatever you like. You can also find us on iTunes. So we always like hearing back from the fans. Is there anything else you have to say to the listeners, Dad?
Nope. Other than the fact that I'm really looking forward to this game, even though it kind of sounds like I'm not. I really am looking forward to just seeing if we can hang and be competitive, and are not going to go in there with our head down and gee golly, I wish we were better kind of mentality. Instead, going in there knowing that we're not likely to win, but we're here to play for 60 minutes, and that's the cultural thing that I'm looking to see change. And I'm reasonably optimistic that I'm going to see a far more of that than what we saw when we played a clearly better team in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I hope to see that too. Ohio State has a history in recent years of blowing our doors off, but we will see.
Yes.
So until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.